All right. Good evening, Baconton and friends who just tuned in to us. We were just making sure everything was straight before we came and talked to you guys. We are making some adjustments here. You see that we have five other individuals other than me, myself, Reverend Harper, that are actually going to tune in and jump in this virtual discussion. And what we're going to talk about tonight is faith in hopeless situations, and kind of help us with some coping ideas and coping with the various trials and tribulations that life will bring, and not only in our personal life, but even in societal matters. So before we get started, I'm gonna allow Sister Ignite to give you greetings and give you her blessings.
All right. Well, I greet everyone that's tuned in the name of Jesus. We just thank you for being here and sharing this time with us. We appreciate you being here. And tonight we are excited about having the opportunity for us to just discuss just everything that's been going on with the racial tensions and everything that we're exposed to at this time. And we're concerned about our youth, so we wanted to have a conversation with the youth. So what we're doing tonight is just that. As you can see, we have a youth panel also assembled, and we have Isaiah Dorr, we have Ariana Scott, and our youth assistant director, Jasmine Nicholson. So we're glad to have them here. We welcome you, and we just pray that you pray for us, and we have a really good conversation about how we're coping and dealing with the situation of racism.
Amen. And then now we're going to allow Pastor Scott to give you his greetings. I know he loves his members, so he got to talk to you.
Well, good evening, Baconton. It is certainly a blessing to see you. And this Wednesday, today and tomorrow, we're doing this a little differently. And we're so happy that you're with us and just sharing with us. Would ask that you please keep our church in prayer, keep our nation in prayer, our state and our nation in prayer. There's a lot of stuff going on right now, and certainly we're going to talk about some of that tonight and how we respond to some of those things. And so it's just great to see you here, to be a part of this, and we're all getting used to this this new technology, and there are times when camera don't look quite like I think it ought to look. But then I put my glasses on and look a little differently. But anyway, thank you all for being here with us today. As we go forward and talk about this, I'll try to interject some things along the way that's going to help us do better, get through this. I think Ram Harper said before, we are going to get through it, and we are going to be better on the other side of it, both of COVID, the virus of COVID, and the virus of racism and sexism and classism and all those things. Not just because the stress comes not just from having to deal with racism, but all these things combined really adds to our stress. And I want, especially tonight, as we focus on our youth and our youth ministry, I want those that are listening to know, and perhaps you're here listening, and get your grandchildren and bring them around. If you're part of our regular Bible study group, get your grandchildren, get your children, and bring them around, and we'll have a discussion. And in tonight's format, you can comment, bring on your comments, and we'll try to address some of those as you make comments live tonight. So thank you again, Reverend Harper, for putting this together. And it's great to see these three young folk with us. And I'll start with Jasmine. Still young adult. Good to see you, Jasmine. It just seemed like just a day or so ago, then you were in this young adult. I mean, you were in this youth group, and now you graduated college, and so we're and back with us. And Isaiah's in college now, going through that, and Ariana is preparing to get to is it? What are you, junior or senior now? What are you, Ariana? What are you?
Oh, I'm a junior.
Junior now. All right. So getting ready to move on out into the world. So again, thank you all for being here, and thank you, Sister McKnight, for leading this effort and with our children. And we're certainly looking forward to the youth ministry doing some great things. And So back to you, Hermon Harper, to do what we do, and I'll just do whatever you all ask me to do. I'm ready to fit in there. All right.
All right. Well, we thank you, Pastor. We thank you for joining us tonight. And again, we do want to, as Pastor said, we are live, and you can interject. You can write down your questions or comments. We will display some, and it may lead to a deeper discussion, and we hope that it does that. But before we go and get started, we have to start this thing off with prayer, and we're going to ask Mr. Isaiah to do that for us.
All right. May you please bow our heads for a prayer. Dear Lord, on this day, may you please bless us. Pray that everything technologically goes well. Pray that we have a fruitful discussion that discusses the underlying stress we've had across the years. And I just pray that everyone who's going through these troubles, whether it be going through COVID, going through the protesting, if they've been injured while protesting, just help them heal and help them get the strength to keep going on with their strong fight. And for the word of God, people of God, amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Man. Well, as we've already heard, we are definitely going to be talking about this idea and centered around our discussion tonight with this idea of faith in difficult situations, coping. Life just brings problems. The book of Job, Job says, man's born full of trouble, and that's what life seems like sometimes, regardless of how old or young we are. So we need some help, and by faith. And we also need help, honestly, psychologically. We don't need to leave that part out to help our mental capacity and our emotional capacity, amen? So we're going to jump into a text that is very familiar. Ariana's going to read John chapter 11 for us. That is John chapter 11, verses 21 through 27. Go ahead, Ariana.
Oh, okay. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, "If you had not been here, my brother would have died. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha answered, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she replied. "I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world." The word of God for the people of God.
Amen. So this is the text that is the community is in a very tumultuous, for lack of better terms, situation. Jesus was told that Lazarus is on his way to pass away, and he had time enough to get there, and he could have shown up there right away, and he probably could have even healed Lazarus, but he shows up in our frame of mind late, and he shows up at the point in time in which Lazarus is dead. And so Martha runs up to him, and now this is the second time this is actually related. This message related to him. It said, "Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not be dead." So let's start this discussion off. Because we're young people, we're real, and one of the things I tell the young people is that, because we have not been indoctrinated into the church and just saying the Christian answers, because if you ask the old folk, they're going to tell you God is always on time. So for young folk, have you ever felt that God was late?
I would say yeah, a lot, because I'm just gonna hop right into the frying pan this one, I guess. I think I was like 9, I think, when it first happened. That's when Trayvon got shot and killed by Hermon. And when you're 9, you're kind of like, you're not like aware of everything, but you notice what's going on around you at that point, right?
Right.
So then after that happens, a year goes by, Tamir Rice happens. After that, Eric Gardner. After that, another black man. After that, black woman, so on and so forth, right? So growing up, when, you hear your older, folks saying, God's gonna, he has our back, right? it kind of gets difficult as someone to keep that type of faith when you keep seeing people and kids look just like you get shot or killed or choked to death by officers who are supposed to protect you. Like, it gets kind of tough to keep that type of mindset when you keep seeing it happen over and over again. And I feel like I'm not gonna say it's worse than what the older generation went through. It's not, because quite frankly, the older generation went through a lot more gruesome stuff. But due to us having social media through our phones and laptops and all that, we see all of it now, right? Like, if it was happening in like California and you were in Georgia, you probably wouldn't see it happen in California. But nowadays you see it happen in Texas, California, you see it happen everywhere. So since we're more exposed to it, it's gonna be a lot more like draining with us. I would think, at least. I would say.
Right. We understand exactly what you're saying. What about you, Ariana?
I do believe that, basically just adding on to what he says, like, because sometimes you never know if it's going to be you next, because you can always pray and be like, God, keep me safe through this day, but you never know if that the child who may have lost their life years ago or yesterday or last month also said the same prayer and still left. So it's more of just, keeping your faith and, still praying for the best, even though you are scared.
Right. And, the one thing that both of you mentioned is that one of the things that makes faith hard is when you have compounding issues that happen. And that's when you have the elders would say it like this: if ain't one thing, it's another. And that's where that phrase comes from, because it seems like when you think you could breathe, now all of a sudden something else happened. I don't know if you guys tuned in and watched when me and Pastor Scott were talking last Sunday, but my point that I made and why I had to take the time to kind of or take a step back was that in the beginning of May, we started getting information about Ahmaud Arbery, and then Breonna Taylor happened, and then George Floyd, and that happened almost in a 3 or 4 week span. And it seemed like, now, like Isaiah was saying, now you're wondering. I'm saying, Ariana said the same thing. Is now you're wondering what's next. And then so in those difficult situations, when you have those compounding issues or those things that could pile on one another, whether it is the social issues or your own personal issues. One of the things that you have to understand is that, especially when we think that God is late, and I'm gonna get more into it later as we go on. That's actually one of my last points that I kind of make there. But the first thing you got to know is there are things that only God can handle. And one of the problems with us as people is that we kind of want to handle it ourselves. And then when we want to handle it ourselves, the problem then comes when God is handling it in his way and in his time. That don't look like how we pictured it in our mind. You know what I'm saying? Because if we think about racism, if God handled it, or in my mind, if God is going to handle this thing, then why are people still hating us? Why are people still doing things that are just so wrong or immoral? And we begin to question that because we expect in our mind that God, when we put the thing in our mind that God is going to handle it, we expect it to look a certain kind of way. And that messes with our faith. Do y'all agree?
Yeah, I would also agree with that, because another thing that I actually was thinking about recently is I've been looking at this whole thing this time recently, not just in the modern time, but in the overarching stories happening over the past I would say century, but just as keep safe with what I actually really know, I'm sure of. For the past I think I'm kind of generalizing here, but the civil rights movement was in 1967. Was it that around that time?
60s, yes.
Right.
So here's the thing, right? When it gets to that point, right, you look at it so from essentially 1960, right, to 2020, right? Black people have been fighting. We've been peacefully protesting. Some of us gotten violent. Some of us have signed petitions. Some of us have tried to get in positions where we can try to change things. But for 60 years, essentially a whole person's lifespan at that point, right? We keep on getting the short end of the stick. Not to say that like other groups don't get treated badly, but like in America specifically, it's the longest time since like the beginning of this whole nation, we've gotten the short end of the stick at every corner, from slavery to discrimination to stereotyping, which essentially is just softcore racism to me. It gets to a point where it's like, you look at the history of the United States, right? And you just question it, like, if God's gonna handle this, at what point is it gonna be handled? Is it gonna be handled in my grandchild's generation? Is it gonna be handled in my grandchild's generation? Like, when will our answer? When will our relief come? Since it's already been happening for the past 300 years at this point. It's like to a point where it's like unimaginable where this isn't part of our life at this point.
Right. I hear you, sir. One of the things that that what gets us in trouble when we connect people's responses to God's love for us, and that's usually what affects us negatively in how we relate to God. When we was a few years ago, we did a prayer rally, and I used the text. I'm looking for it right now. I used the text that's in Genesis. It's in Genesis chapter 2. I just want to make sure 2 and 15. And I referenced that, and I said that the command that Adam was given at that point in time to man was that we were to tend and keep the land. And what I pulled out of that and what I made it mean at that moment was that there is some time where we have dominion over this world, and sometimes we have to look at how we're going to fix it. And one of the things that lifts my spirits up, even as we look into this idea of hopelessness, or seeing that God is in control. One of the things that I always notice that almost every turn of the century, or even every generation that comes, especially y'all generation and younger, y'all seem to be more accepting to a lot more ideals than what we were. And what we see now in these protests that happen along the way is that when we even did our protests here in Hinesville, one of the greatest things that blessed my soul was to see all the colors marching together for a similar cause. And I think when we see that God is in control, one of the things we also have to see is that when people take control of what power God has given them. And so when you look at the text that we were just looking at right then and there, Jesus is this man, and he's this man, a form from God and whatnot. He is human and many people's eyes. So he took control of the situation. And even Martha said, well, if the Lord, if I know that you're with the Lord, and if you ask God anything, it surely will happen. And so sometimes the greatest thing that we can see in these moments are when we look for God handling it. One of the things that we got to look for is see which people are working and moving the way that God is moving, or the way that God should move. And usually, one of the things that I always tell, I give the example to children often, is that our God relationship with us is kin to our parents' relationship to us. And if you really want to see how God operates and moves, look to how your parents operate and move. They have this unconditional love, and they do whatever it is for you. But then there's sometimes they have to let you be responsible for some things. and they'll let you see some things. They'll let you handle some things. And so that's what God does to us for this land. And so when you see the people marching, we used last week, how long, not long. And when you see that, we don't know how long, but since we have control and since we have dominion, if you will, let us take the responsibility in our hand.
Can I interject
yes.
that Isaiah brought up a very good point that many of our young people are dealing with. They've heard us say, they've seen us go through some stuff, and then in their lifetime, if I wanted to talk about, from our lifetime, we've seen. I lived through the '60s and '70s and the '80s and the '90s, and now here we are again with in your lifetime, Isaiah, with Trayvon Martin and starting there, and we'll go forward. And we say the same thing. So I validate the fact that you feel, and many of our young people feel, where I think we start out with the question, where is God? God, are you really there? Whose side are you on? And I want to suggest to you something to take a look at. There's a thing called system of study, if you will, called systematic theology. And systematic theology starts kind of, and we go through some things, or how we would respond, or how we see God responding to various situations. And then along with that, there are several books written on what's called liberation theology. And liberation theology is similar to systematic theology in that you study, it's from a point of does God really care about the poor? Does God really care about those people who are oppressed? And so you kind of look at that. And then in the 60s, in answer to the question that you just posed, Isaiah, in the 60s, a fellow by the name of Cohen, C-O-N-E, wrote several books about something now that we started calling Black liberation theology. And it is a response of Black people to the hurt and the anger and the frustration that we feel. And how then do we still believe in God? We still maintain the faith that we have in the face of the continual things. And so when you look at that from a scriptural point of view, you really see that, yes, God is a God of the oppressed. God is a God of the rejected. He knows our pain. He knows our sorrow. For Jesus himself was wounded. He was rejected of men. And so he feels that. So when you think about Black liberation theology, you see that in terms of how does God speak to you as a young Black man in the midst of all this stuff? And when you think about that, God still speaks the same, the messages are still the same, that God cares about us. Now, where we as adults sometimes make the mistake of teaching, saying to you that because you're a Christian, everything's going to be all right. That's not the case. Because we're Christians, we are going to have some difficulty. But the God that we know, the God that we serve, the Father of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, that God be with us through our trouble. That's our hope. That's our sustaining hope, that God is with us in this fight. And in the end, we don't know when the end is going to be, but in the end, we're going to get through it. We're going to get through it.
Right. This is Mike. Do you want to add to that?
Well, one of the things that I thought of and what I would like for us to take away is some practical ways that we can actually give our youth for them to take away as to how to deal with this in practical ways. Now, I realize that everybody's different. And so what might be a practical way for Jasmine or for Ariana might not be the same practical way for Isaiah. But what I would like for us is before this is done, that they actually have an action point where they can have a practical, something that they can do practically to be a part of this and also to make a difference in this, whether it's large or small, something that's practical that they can do.
You know, you bring up a awesome point. One of the things that I've noticed and learned about, and Jasmine, I see, I noticed about young people my age and younger, they really want to do something. And it's sometimes the helplessness is related to the hopelessness. And so you're right, when we don't give them action areas and action points, and you know, the first thing that we're always going to go to, especially you out there now, is you got to vote. And then encourage your mom. You ask her again, have you done the census? And we don't know, just, you know, bring that up as an example. You know, so things like that are the action areas and whatnot. We've been talking a few weeks now, and one action area that probably everybody can do right now is this idea of writing our representative the letter for the hate crime bill. They go back into session. What date, Pastor?
They went into session yesterday, I believe it was, and they're going to be in for about 10 days.
Right. And so, and I think we base a deadline around the 19th, and you know, so those are action areas that you can do. Ariana can do that. You don't have to be 18 to write somebody that represents you. You know, and you know, those are things you can do, and it doesn't have to be this great big format or whatever the case is. And you know, if you need help with that, you know, we definitely be here to do that. So Sister McKnight, you're definitely right with action points, and then we're also going to get into emotional action points here in just a moment. Jasmine, you have something?
I do. I was just gonna let them know that, you know, pretty much what you were saying, they shouldn't look at it like I'm too young to do this. Because like the first protest that we had was held by a 19-year-old. You know, so you're not too young to make a difference. And like you said, it doesn't have to be anything big. You can, you know, do something that might just be for you and your friends, something that y'all can hold and start off, or, you know, just something so you can like make a difference. Because I'm sure you all are just as frustrated as the adults are. I don't know their personal feelings, which I was going to, you know, ask you guys, how are you actually feeling, and, you know, how are you coping with it right now with everything that's going on?
You know, one of the biggest things that we can do as we think about how we cope is to really, first of all, do what Isaiah just did, was to admit and to acknowledge the pain. Because if we gloss over the pain that our young folk are feeling, or that we are feeling, if we gloss over it, then we devalue ourselves and around. That is why it is so important. Not that you can give and feel the pain I feel, but I just want you to understand that I have some pain, and that's what I think. That's what Isaiah is saying. Along with that, how long do we keep feeling the pain? And I'm here to tell you that I don't know how long, but I will tell you that I do validate the fact that we feel pain, and we will develop some things that you can do to express that. And one of the things we can do, and you've seen it across the nation now, is that our folk are getting involved in doing something. And that is why oftentimes, if you don't harness that, it becomes destructive behavior.
Right.
So we want to harness that so that it becomes some constructive things we can do.
Right. And you know, Jasmine brought up the point that it was a young lady, and really across the globe. And I actually say that meaning quite literally. When you look at all the protests across the globe, right at this point, it's really done by young people. I think, and Jasmine said, you know, they're just as tired as the elders are at this point. And at this point, you know, one of the key differences than those of us those that were in the past and whatnot, and to now, is that y'all can go up and talk to somebody. You go 50, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, you better not have to address how you felt about what somebody did to you. You kind of had to let it happen. And one of the things now, and people talk about it, and I really don't. I think there's a limit to it, if you will. But one of the things, or one of the key things that happens is, young people will post things, and they air what's on their mind online, and regardless of how the elders may feel about it sometimes, and even I may look at it and say, "Now you shouldn't put that up," but what they're doing is releasing. And as we will probably say, or we'll use a lot of the idea of journaling, if you will, and when we talk about journaling, you can get a little book out if you want, and you don't have to be in complete sentences. You just relate how you feel or whatever the case is. But generally what's happening now, you have a lot of young people that are actually posting how they feel at this moment. And one of the things that we find out is that, because one of the coping points is you have to share your feelings. And one of the things that you find out in posting or speaking up about your things, you're not the only one that feels that way. We just always have to kind of make sure that we are sharing at some point. But Pastor was right that you kind of have to validate your feelings, and you have to identify your feelings. You have to know how you're feeling, and at some points you have to know why you're feeling it. But there's an action area in which we all can do. There's another idea. When we continue to talk about faith in our hopeless situations, is that even though it gets tough to, and I think we, I don't know if Sister Unite met this, but I think sometimes I think the difficult thing that we probably have in many churches today is that we try to super spiritualize things, and really not understand the feelings. And even think about the story of Lazarus dying. The Bible says the shortest verse in the Bible is in this particular text, and it's Jesus wept. Jesus had already knew that he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead. He had already had it in his mind. In fact, the reason I know that he had it in mind, because he told his disciples at the beginning of the beginning of the chapter that says that, hey, I'm glad for your sake that you're going to see me do this great thing, so that it increases your faith. However, when Jesus sees the pain of the people, and he sees the pain of the community, and he begins to have compassion, he then weeps, and he allows them to have that emotion. When Martha said, "Jesus, where you been at?" He didn't say, "What you doing? Talk to me that way." And sometimes when we try to over spiritualize some things, we kind of silence our youth in some way, shape, or form, because they have real feelings that they haven't attributed to their faith, if you will. And so, Ariana, have you ever felt like you came to Bible study and you like, that's not really what I want to hear right now?
I would say so, yes. Because sometimes, when you have a certain opinion or something, or feel some type of way about something, it's like you stick with that and you're going to defend it to your best of your ability. But if someone else has a different opinion on it, and if you can't take the what's it called? Constructive criticism then you're going to be like, well, yeah, that's not what I was expecting. And then you kind of start to feel like your opinion doesn't matter, but it does. You just have to learn how to be able to, stand on your point, but also get it from the other side. if you can. But yeah.
Reverend Harper?
Yes.
You know, one of the things that I think about is the fact that sometimes we, without realizing it, dismiss people because our opinions might be different. And I'm being honest, I've been guilty of it, of just dismissing someone because their opinion might be different. But I think what's important is that with our youth and our young people, we need to allow them to be able to say whatever they want to say to us, and validate the fact that they have a right to feel that way, whether or not we agree with it or not. And so a lot of times when the youth come to us or they want to talk to us, just our expression, how we respond to them is a way, it could just turn them off and they wouldn't want to come back. So we as adults, we should also learn how to, when somebody comes to us with an issue or whatever it might be, not to look like you're so floored because of what they said. And remember, Jesus said, we know in the scriptures that he was tempted in all points like we were, but yet without sin. But the thing is, so Jesus also experienced what we experience. So whatever it is that we may have experienced in our feelings, in our emotions and all that stuff, Jesus experienced it. So we need to let our young people know that we don't devalue you or dismiss you because you have a certain feeling about something. And we want them to be able to talk and share and let us know what they're going through because they're valuable.
Right.
And I feel like it takes a lot out of the youth to even come to to people and talk about their feelings sometimes. Yeah. So, if you always have your guard up, they're not going to be willing to do that. And these kids really go through stuff. Like people like, oh, they're kids, what do they go through? They really, go through stuff. It may be little to you, but in their world it's big. Yeah, and it's really important for you to be like, transparent. And sometimes you don't even need to really say anything. You should just listen.
Be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something, but yeah, like it kind of applies here. Like something like that lines up perfectly. That is like the old, like not. I'm saying that an older style of parenting is essentially the style of the parent being fully confident in what they were taught as a kid. Essentially saying, I know what exactly I'm doing, just listen to me and be straight, right? But it's like, I understand that the idea of kids have to listen to their parents. I understand that, right? Kids have to listen to their elders. They know enough about the world that it's useful to them. However, I do think something important that the elders have to start doing is understanding that you had to listen to your kids, listen to the younger people. Because if you don't, the most important thing in like getting a relationship and getting like a trustworthy confidant with a younger person when you're older is that trust. And if you don't allow that kid or a young adult to build that, comfortableness, that openness with you, they're not gonna be as receptive as you want them to be. Because like in an instance where like say like for instance if Pastor Scott like had like a one-track mindset, not gonna open it to any type of idea at all, right? There's no way anyone would go to that type of mindset because if you're not open to the younger mindset, because if not open to a younger mindset, which is vastly different from the older mindset, they're not going to talk to you. They're not going to want to understand you. They're not going to want to, what's the word? They're not going to want to, I guess, like confess and come like talk their issues with you, because they know for a fact you're not going to look at it from their perspective at all. Mm-hmm. You're not.
Yeah.
I think that's like.
I didn't mean to cut you out, Isaiah. Would you finish?
Oh, and I think that's like the main reason why like a lot of parents, while they think they know their kid, they think they know what the kid feels and that they trust them, they'll be surprised to learn a lot of kids aren't comfortable talking about personal deep issues with their own parents, let alone a community figure.
Right. You know, there's this thing. Every generation has it. I'm not sure what the 2020 saying is at this point in time. But one that resonates with everybody is keep it 100. And you know, be honest, be yourself, be 100% you, whatever the case is. Every generation has that saying in some kind of format. Yeah, I think the problem that Isaiah had brought up, and even Ariana had brought up, is that you know, how can I be 100 with people that don't allow me to be 100? And how can I be open, especially uh, in a situation such as this? I let's think about the idea of the COVID-19 thing. One thing that I was conscious of, and if somebody would have, or anybody could have, came and talked to me, one thing that I was conscious of is the difficulty that the children had.
Yeah.
Every child don't hate going to school.
Right.
Now, if that would have happened to me,
Yeah.
when I was going to Bradwell, I would be loving life right now.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, my junior and senior year, every day for like 3 or 4 months straight, we had those bomb threats. I love those days. I enjoyed those days because it got us out of school for half a day, or you know, at least half the morning, whatever. I love those days. But we have children that's not their same viewpoint.
Right.
Those children miss their friends and whatnot. And if you think about it, that's a big outlet for them. And you know, and we're not even talking about the children that didn't when it comes to those that were privatized, if you will, and not having something to eat and things like that, and not having the necessities at the house. We're just talking about the children that, hey, I just wanted to go see my friend. And then you have a COVID situation that says you can't even bring your friend to your house. And so there's a lot of things that and then when you can't bring your friends to your house, then you have racial issue happen. Now who do I talk to? Because my parents don't understand me, and you know, children always think that, and I think that even if we try to be understandable, children just kind of have that thing there, and I'm not sure what you do with that. But if they feel that, then they don't have their friends to talk to. And then even if I try to text or call my friend, how they respond or when they respond or how long it takes them to respond, I have to deal with that. And so I think one of the things I thought about was how our children felt during this season. Because it was not the same as what I felt. Go ahead, Isaiah.
Yeah, I got the perfect example of this. Me being like a fresh college student and stuff like that. You know, when you go out, it's not like, here's the thing, right? I do not hate home. I'll never say I hate my home. I love my home. I love my family. I will never hate them. However, there are certain times where kids, young adults, they need to distance themselves from whatever the family is up to. They need that. Your family is there for you. You'll love them. But at the same point in time, they will most likely always be the biggest stress factor in your life. You know what I'm saying?
Amen.
Amen. So quite frankly, when I was like forced to go back home a little bit early from college, I was like, I hated it, quite frankly, because like there was like, there are certain things going on back home that I did not want to come back to at that point in time. I just wanted to be a little away from it a little bit longer. And I'm not the only one who deals with that, because when in high school, the kids who seem like they are the happiest in the world, they had no problem involved. You don't know when they go back home, they have a whirlwind of problems behind closed doors. And the only way they can get out all this like anger, stress, and sadness out is by going to school and talking with the friends that they make along the way in there. So it's quite frankly, that lack of separation while many people may think that would actually help, that would actually like strengthen the bond between the parent and like make things better and fair for the family, it can actually do the complete opposite and just make the whole relation worse than it was.
Right. Ariana, I see you reacting. You want to add to that?
Yes, I do actually. With that being said, I do love being home. I love coming home, with my family. Family is where my home is, no matter who house, whatever. But with me, I know personally I have some issues where I would rather be alone, and to cope with those, I do activities in school, which is why I'm always either running or I'm playing my instrument, because those keep me, distracted, okay, and stuff. And then now it's like being home all the time. There's nothing for me to do but to be in my head, when personally I know that's not what's best for me, and I know it's not going to go well for me. And another thing with this whole quarantine, staying at home thing, is the way I learned was not working with the online school. They weren't clicking at all. There were some things I struggled with in school, so I know I needed help right then and there. But being, at home and trying to do this work, knowing I wouldn't understand it even in school, it was a lot harder for me to like keep my grades up, and for me to like remember all the content and stuff that I know I'm going to need going into my junior year. But knowing I didn't have the full education for my sophomore year with the classes I needed then and now, I feel like there's going to be a lot of catching up to do, even though I'm in a new grade, different teacher, different classes and everything. So yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things that I want to say is that Isaiah, you're not wrong. That's quite natural to feel that way. And because even when you grow older and you get married, you better separate for a while, and then come back to that. That's just human experience and whatnot. And and it doesn't mean that we love anybody less, and we completely understand those feelings. And Ariana brings up the point of kind of forward thinking, if you will, thinking about what's life going to be like after this. And when I go into the 11th grade, and those are stressors. And Jasmine used the idea that children have real problems, and regardless if it's like I said, it wouldn't have felt that way to me. But I even look at Naomi every once in a while, and she gets frustrated when she can't put the top back on or something. Because at her age, that's a stressor for her. I can't do this, and but I cannot minimize her feeling that way. I probably have to go over there and help her. And so, whatever stage of life our children are in, we have to be sure that we do go over and help them out, and help them talk these things through, whatever issues that they're dealing with, personal or even the social issues.
So we talked about some concrete things that I think Sister McKnight mentioned, some action things. The first point so far we've covered really is we have to express how we feel. That's a concrete thing to do.
Yes.
And so whether you listen to us out there or wherever you are, the thing I will tell you, whether you're young or old, is we have to first of all begin to express what it is that we're bothered by, and whether it's COVID, whether it's racism, or whatever it is that we're bothered by, it's a good thing to express it. Someone mentioned earlier that we gotta, when you express it with somebody. Find somebody you can talk to.
Mm-hmm.
Find somebody that you can express that with. And I say so often to folks, you gotta find somebody that will hear you, that will listen to what you got to say. They don't have to have all the answers. Just somebody to listen, let you talk. And so, what a key thing we've done so far is just listen to you. And I validate what you and Ariana are saying. I validate that. And you all are speaking. You all are just as you all are a sample of what you are saying across our nation.
Exactly.
The very same thing that you all saying tonight. And we as adults, older people, we've got to listen to you to validate the fact that you're dealing with some stuff that different than the way we're dealing with it. So that's the first point, is that we gotta listen. You gotta speak it, and we gotta listen. Find somebody you can share it with. And Reverend Harper brought up a great point, and I shared with people along my journey. If you don't have anybody you can talk to right then, just start writing it down. Journal your feelings. You feel a whole lot better.
Right. And, you know, one of the things that, you know, Isaiah, you said you was going for psychology, right?
Yeah, I was. I am.
Yeah, and one of the things that you may come across, depending on how your studies is structured and whatnot, you're going to come across this idea in this phrase, in this term, emotional intelligence. And what that simply means is that knowing how you feel and why you feel that way. And you know, I when I walk outside and I notice that my tire is flat, I get upset because now I got to figure out what I got to do. Is it a hole? Is it a nail? Is it, you know, can I just put air in it with the compressor that I have? You know, and so all those emotions start. So so I identify the part of my emotional intelligence is, one, know that I'm upset that my tire is flat, and then know why that I'm upset because my tire is flat. And I think one of the things that I don't like hearing when we discuss the youth, at least not all the time, is that our youth are weaker. At some point, I think that there's a difference, so to speak, in the way that they live. I think they're just more in touch with their emotions, whereas we've never had that opportunity. Even me being only 32, I never really had the opportunity to really say how I feel. And so now the youth of today and those younger than me, they don't have that barrier into where you can't say this and you can't say that. And to the rest of the world, it makes it seem like they're sensitive. But everybody's been feeling this way a long time. Black folk been feeling this way a long time. But just now there's no restriction on how we can really identify that. So I don't. I think that there's some areas that we could probably say, well, you know, look at it this way versus that way. But I think that that youth today are probably more in touch with their emotions and are given that opportunity to be more in touch with their emotions than what we were. And Sister Benaya, do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I remember being younger, just the way I was raised, I dare not question authority. You know what I'm saying? I dare not ask if my dad said this is the way it is, I dare not say, but why? You know? So, and in turn, we gave our children an opportunity to express themselves. So we would tell them, we would have family meetings. If they ever had an issue, we would have family meetings, and we would tell them, you could talk to us about anything that you have an issue with us. The only requirement is that you be respectful about it. So they were able to, when they were upset with us or whatever, they didn't like what we chose to do as far as discipline or anything like that, they had an opportunity to speak what they thought. Sometimes it wasn't a good idea, but you know, that was the plan. But I think now with our youth, it's really important because I think people in my generation, so many of us, like you stated, we don't want to talk, we don't want to share, we hold things back, you know. So I think it's actually a good thing for our youth to be able to have that emotional intelligence. They need to know why they did what they did, why they think what they think, why they feel what they feel. They need to think about what's driving them emotionally. They need that. So I think it's important for them to be able to express that.
Can I then Oh, go ahead, Isaiah. Go ahead.
Okay, something you said just like kind of I wanna kind of expound upon. You said emotions driving people, why it drives you. I think I want to mention like just for if it's not mentioned here by anyone else, what we need to do like as a people with the anger we feel, because like I'm pretty sure the anger Black people feel it's everywhere. It's in the young people, it's in the older people, it's in the
Yep.
middle-aged 30. Is there we need to turn that anger and hate that we all have into something that will drive us to make it change. Use that hate to make it use that hate as like coal as train keep going forward. And I think one of the things that we need, one of the best ways to do it is this: if any young person, I don't know if they probably might not see it because it's like mainly an older audience, but to any older person, what we need to start doing is 18 older, 18, 20-ish, 21-ish. We need to start voting, but not necessarily start voting, but knowing the people who are voting for. I think that's kind of like something that old people might have to do too, because like, I'm sorry to tell my mom like this, but like we just recently voted, and she told me like straight up, I don't know half the people I was voting for. And I think something we need to start doing as people is voting is not enough. We have to know exactly who we're putting in office. What have they done? What have they been known to do? What have they done in the past? Because quite frankly, the first step is getting people to actually make that change. And the next step after that is to get people to make the right choice for us in the future. And if we can't do that by just looking at a name, looking at a face, and thinking, hey, this person seems right, based on the commercial, no. You need to look at what they've done in the past to really, judge them.
Wise. Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
Good job, Isaiah.
Our first point was that we're going to express ourselves.
Mhm.
I think we moved into our second point is we got to have a plan of action for ourselves, and maybe that ought to be as we respond to the hurt and all this. As we respond to that hurt, perhaps we need to make sure that we are trusting God. In the
Mhm.
that we start out with, Jesus asked Martha, "Do you believe that I'm able to make this situation better?" And so when we think about that, without using a term that Ram Harper used, without over spiritualizing that,
Mhm.
make sure we got a set of values, something that we can lean on to say, this is what I believe, my core values. That is why we've had you all in Sunday school and Bible study. We can speak about that because as you get older, those things, those principles we put into you that we've tried to instill in you will then become your set of core values.
Mhm.
We respond to the stress that we feel out of what's inside of us. Do I really believe that God is who He say is? And if I believe that, then I'm going to respond. My next, after recognizing the hurt, my next point now is responding out of what's on the inside of me. And so instead of going out and destroying things, Isaiah, you're right. We now go and vote. Something productive, productive instead of destructive.
Right, right. And it really, Pastor, used the idea of, coming to Bible study, coming to Sunday school, and, and laying the foundation, and, giving us something to stand on in times like this. And that we can trust God in the moments, especially when we feel the worst at the for lack of better terms. And one of the things and the reason why we can trust God is because at the end of the day, God has not, is not, and will never fail. And there are things that we look at that causes us that we may waver or whatever. But one of the things that that happens during the season of Lazarus and how he's brought back out of death, if you will, and brought back out of the tomb is that it helped the people see God's hand move and still move and always move and see how powerful God really is. One of the things that we can look at, especially us as a people in our community, in the Black community, is that I seen it and I heard it again a few weeks ago. One of the things that we can remember that we can hold on to as a African American is that we are the descendants of those who survived. Hear that and feel that. We are the descendants of those who made it.
Yes.
We're the cream of the crop, if you will, for lack of a better term. We are the descendants of those who have survived. Not only we're the descendants of those that have survived, we are the descendants of those who trusted God, and regardless of the steps that we think that should have made in the past, we're still not where we used to be.
Right.
And if God brought us out of slavery, and if God brought us out of Jim Crow, we could see His hand, and we could see that God always moves when we need or have the ability to. When we waver in our faith waver, we still just trust God, and we still let God pick us up as we continue our action moments, and as we continue not just sitting idly. We don't want to just sit idly and then just be mad because this thing keep happening. And what we need to do is, because this thing keep happening, then the old song says, I'm gonna keep on marching, I'm gonna keep on walking, I'm gonna keep on talking, I'm gonna keep on going up into freedom land. And so until we make it there, we still got to keep on doing this thing. And our faith is gonna get weak. We are gonna feel bad some days. We are gonna get tired some days.
Yep.
But you got to remember that we are the descendants of those who survive, and we're going to survive, and we're going to survive. And as I said last week, one of the reasons I want to survive is to make sure that Naomi sees a different aspect of America. That's my goal. Is if I could just get her to see a different aspect of America, that's what we want to do. Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
I like some of you, like, I don't want anyone else, like any other like young person like me, to grow up knowing they're actually in danger because of just how they look.
Right.
Like that's something that's like I just kind of grew up with, just like knowing. And it's one of those things where like I hate the fact that young African American children have to learn about racism before they're the age of like 15, 13, because they just look a certain way, and because they look that way, they will be treated that one way. I think one of the things that stand out, one of the things that like was most striking to me in that case was I looked at how George Floyd was treated prior to his death. Even though he was just, I think he was intoxicated, right? That's all it was. He was intoxicated. He had 4 officers on him, heavily armed, and someone on his neck. Meanwhile, it's not to like, you know what I'm saying, like box on all police officers, right? Meanwhile, I think it was Dylan Roof, the man who shot up the church, I think it was.
Right.
It makes no sense to me how someone who just shot up a building, killing 9 people, was able to, one, be taken to a police car, handcuffs, no force involved. He was able to be taken to Burger King because he was hungry on the way there. He was able to get to a police room because he was able to get to a police room. Meanwhile, people like me can get killed at a traffic stop. And finally, he was able to get to a court case where people like me weren't able to even make to the police station. And that's like, to me, the biggest proof that we are treated vastly different than white people. It's not to make white people feel bad about young white people feel bad about who they are. They didn't make privilege. They didn't ask for it. They didn't, want it. But quite frankly, look at how they treated a mass shooter versus a Black person who was intoxicated on top of the car. It makes no sense.
Well said.
Quite frankly, he's intoxicated. People who aren't a lethal threat to you should not be and should not be having 4 people using force on you that can kill a man. Meanwhile, someone who just killed people has no force use them at all. It makes no sense at all.
Right.
And it needs to stop. It needs to stop because, quite frankly, you can't sit here and claim yourself, I'm the protector of the people, the police. Meanwhile, a whole group of people can't trust you because of what your partners and what your friends are doing to us as a people.
Right. Right.
You can't expect us to see you as justice when the first thing we see you do is kill a young kid at a park for having a toy gun. When a Trump supporter can go into a protest with a rifle and no one bats an eye. It's like, it's too much. You want us to trust you, but we can't because look at the history. Look at what we've seen.
Well said.
We can't trust you right now. And we won't trust you, well, at least me. I can't trust them, and so I see them making that change to put us on the same pedestal we should be at. If the Constitution says everyone is equal under this flag, if the Pledge of Allegiance is saying liberty and justice for all, we should be treated the same way, not with more force and aggression than white people. It makes no sense. It's not fair, and it's hypocritical of America to even pride themselves on this whole ideal of justice and freedom when you are oppressing us as a people to this day. It's hypocritical of them. They can't expect us to have that patriotic feeling when we have lived a different world from the white Americans. I like to think about this, and I say to a couple people, I said to a couple people when I was at college, there are 2 Americas. There's a white America, and there's minority America. And white America is where you see the picket fence. That's where you see the dog in the backyard. That's where you see the walking through the neighborhood, smiling, hello neighbor. In the minority America, there's fear, anger, hate. You're not sure if you're gonna make it to 21 yet. You're not even sure at that point anymore. I mean, like, it's a whole different world. You can't compare it to. They can't compare it to the fear and pain we had and feel.
That's right.
You know, Isaiah, that was well spoken, and full of emotion and passion, and honestly, what needed to be heard. And not from me. And I'll make a joke real quick. My wife is correcting me. I'm not. I said I was 32 earlier. I'm actually 33. And yeah. But you know, they don't need to hear that from us, Isaiah. They need to hear it from young people like you, because, and like Ariana, because y'all are seeing it too. And it's not just something that we implanted in your head. This is stuff that you have seen. And this is stuff that you feel, and that's why we are. And I thought this was very meaningful for us to have this tonight with the youth, and because I know, Pastor knows, Sister B. Knight knows, Jasmine knows that we ain't the only ones mad right now, and we ain't the only ones upset. We ain't the only ones hurt. And so I'm glad to have had this dialogue with you. And Isaiah, there's a quote, and I think this is what you are looking for us to keep on doing. Martin Luther King says, "All we ask is for America to be true to what they say on paper."
Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
That's all we ask. We're not asking for anything different. We're not even asking for special treatment. Affirmative action is not special treatment. That was just a way and a process for us to be true to what America said on paper.
That's right.
All we ask, all Isaiah's asking, all Ariana's asking, is for
true to what you said on paper.
Be true to what you said on paper. Amen. So I don't want to rush you guys, and we're gonna do this again. I think we can do this again, and maybe more in a private setting, so that way y'all can really get y'all emotions going and get it all out. But we would do this again, I hope that it was beneficial to you, Isaiah and Ariana. Was it?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was.
And then honestly, I think it was beneficial to us as adults.
Amen.
You know, we kind of hear the truth, and not to speculate what's happening and try to fix it. We will. It was a great time. And Pastor, do you want to say anything before we go and let Jasmine pray us out?
We've done well. I appreciate you all. I really appreciate you. Job well done.
Sister McKnight?
No, I'm grateful for having this. I think it was needed, and like you said, we probably should do another one, and probably soon.
Yes.
Maybe in a private setting, so the youth, and we may be able to have a couple more, and just really be open and honest.
Yes, we could do that. Like you said, we can make it happen soon. Amen. The only thing I do want to remind us as a church is that on Friday, talk about doing something positive, is that we will have our Juneteenth program. I'm excited about it at 7 p.m. It will go live and it will stream live. So please tune into that, and we hope that you're blessed by it. I'm ready. I'm ready to see my production. You know, I don't get to see it like y'all see it until it airs. Amen. That's all. And Jasmine, if you do have any parting words before you pray, please do so, and then pray us out.
Okay, I just want to say I really love this because I like to hear what the younger people have to say, and it's beautiful that you guys have such like intelligent things that's going on in your head, and you're not you're looking at it at a very mature point of view. And I love that, because that means that you were paying attention to something along the way, and that you are grounded. And that is just awesome, because whenever you do move away, like Isaiah, you're like pretty much on your own, and these are the ideas and the thoughts that are going through your head without anyone spoon feeding it to you. These are all your thoughts, and I just really love that. And Ariana, you speaking from a high school point of view, I love how you guys have like an educated point of view. I love that.
Yep.
Amen.
All right. So, can we all bow our heads for a word of prayer?
Yes,
Dear Lord, thank you for allowing all of us to be here tonight and be able to put everything out on the table. And I hope that they gained a way to cope with the situations that's going on in the world, and know just to put you first. And whenever they're in need, they can come and seek help from either someone who is trustworthy, and also seek help in you, Lord. In your sweet holy name, I pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right. Night.
Oh, victory in Jesus.